This is the BiggerPockets Podcast, show 139.
You're listening to BiggerPockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.
What's going on, everybody? This is Josh Dorkin, host of the BiggerPockets Podcast, here with my good friend, Mr. Brandon Turner. Hey, Brandon.
How you doing, Josh?
I'm great, man. I'm great.
Good.
How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm moving in the next couple of weeks, which is exciting, which you just found out about apparently, because I never told you.
Nice house.
Yeah,
moving on up to the east side.
It's the same. Yeah, I'm moving like 2 miles away, but now I'll have a view and a hot tub.
Yeah, man.
It's a friend. Yeah. So I bought this house. I can kind of explain. A friend of mine who was, kind of sad. He went through a divorce a few years ago, back three years ago, whatever. And at the time, I talked to him about his house, obviously, because, I'm a real estate guy and he wanted to ask some questions. So we talked about it and, it was way outside of my price range. And it was, I just didn't even envision that I could ever live there. And it's not, we're talking $280,000. This isn't like $1 million land. But, it was just out of my price range. Anyway, so then I took a drive the other day with my wife and, a month ago now. And I noticed it was listed with a real estate agent. And I hadn't talked to him since that time a few years ago. So he's happy to get out of it. So I got a great deal on it. And I'm going to do a little live and flip, live there for a couple of years, fix it up, hopefully make myself $100,000 by flipping it. So that's
there
the goal.
You go. Awesome. Yeah. And it's beautiful.
Thanks. It is pretty cool. And I'm doing an FHA loan. So I'm house hacking essentially like the live and flip version. I'm going to be in this entire thing for under $15,000, including like doesn't need much repairs. It just needs updating.
Yeah.
And it's going to be an awesome live and flip. So I'm kind of combining investment with my own advice that I give in the book on investing in real estate with no and low money down.
Wow. Look at that. Look at that. Nice, cool. Man. No, that's great. Cool. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I don't really care.
Fine. I want to tell you.
I care. Come on. All right, man. Well, let's get into this thing. Today, we've got a pretty cool interview. It's a pretty interesting newbie show. So for those of you who are listening, there's definitely a lot of I'd say inspiration for the new guy. Before we go there, big thanks to all of our listeners. We definitely appreciate you guys. We hope you spread the word and tell everybody about the BiggerPockets podcast. And we also ask if you've got a minute or two to jump onto iTunes or Stitcher or SoundCloud and leave us a rating review. iTunes is obviously, well, it's not obviously, but it's probably the most important place to go and do it. I'm going to share a little review from one of our users really quickly. This is from DSARV23, and it's, I'm so glad I found this podcast. I'm 25 and married, work as a security guard 3.5 days a week on night shift Wednesday through Saturday. I'll be honest, I only have a diploma under my belt as far as education, but I have a ton of drive to learn and plenty of work ethic to back it. Recently started to get into the learning curve of REI within the past month. This podcast has put a lot into perspective, especially not only how to build and start, how to maintain things and keep growing. This is definitely going to be my go-to place when I have questions and concerns in this new endeavor. Thank you, BiggerPockets. I've listened to the first few episodes and can't wait to listen to the rest and catch up. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool.
Let's do our world famous
quick tip.
All right, a quick tip today is you may have seen this already, and we may have even talked about it, but I wanted to bring it up again. We have this new thing called dashboard boxes. And if you go to your BiggerPockets account and go to your dashboard, click the little home icon in the upper left corner of the navigation bar, you go to your dashboard, and down below is a list of boxes of things that you can do that we recommend you do next. It might be check out this cool thing on the site, or can you give us some more information about this, or what are you interested in? Take a quick survey. There's things that are designed to help you get more out of BP. So go check out your dashboard boxes, and every couple of weeks there's new boxes appearing that are designed to help you and to help us present and bring better things to you. So
it's all about personalizing your experience, your own experience, and everybody's going to have different boxes based upon the information they tell us. So definitely do that.
Cool. All right, well, let's get into this thing. Today's guest is Fat Tony. And you'll hear why we call him Fat Tony, why he calls himself Fat Tony later on. But Fat Tony is a real estate investor, lives in the Los Angeles area, which, as most of you guys know, prices can be ridiculous. But he's figuring out a way to make it work and actually invest in real estate at a distance. And so the thing that I love about the show is his adherence to lifestyle. He doesn't want to be a handyman. He doesn't want to do his own work. He doesn't want to be trapped by his rental properties. And so he's figured out a way to make it work without being trapped. So I love that. So
that's great. Well, let's bring him on. All right, Fat Tony, welcome to the show, man. Let's just open up with that. Fat Tony, what on earth is that about?
Yeah, good question, and get asked it a lot, believe it or not. So in ninth grade, I was about 15 years old, and my friends thought it would be funny to give me a mafia name. My real name is Adam Christopher Taylor, and they said that's kind of just a dorky white kid name, which is exactly what I was. And they're like, yeah, let's give you a tough mafia name. It'll be funny. And now more than half my life later, it's stuck around.
That's awesome.
So in your professional life, I mean, everything across the board, you are Fat Tony.
That's it. Yeah, I worked at a big magazine for about 5.5 years, and in the masthead every month, it just said Fat Tony, and that's my name.
I love it. I love it.
But awesome. For those people who are not watching this on YouTube, sometimes we put out our episodes on YouTube. But if you're watching this on the actual, or listening on the podcast, you can't see, but Fat Tony is not actually an overweight guy. You're pretty in shape. I saw a picture of you in Hawaii, I think, on your Instagram. I think it looked like Hawaii because you were doing the hang loose.
I live in Southern California, so
maybe that's what it was. All right. Anyway, you look a little bit more in shape than a guy that named Fat Tony, I'd probably imagine. So you do CrossFit, right? Is that your thing?
I do. Yeah, I grew up riding BMX bikes my whole life, and then about 2.5 years ago now, I found this thing called CrossFit that a bunch of the pro riders had started doing, and it was improving their riding and everything. And it got to the point where I was like, all right, cool, let me try this out. Like, if I can become better on my bike and be able to not get hurt or just last longer endurance-wise, then I'm all for it. So I started doing it, and within a couple months, I got to the point where I just loved it so much. I was like afraid to go ride my bike because if I crashed, I wouldn't be able to go train in the gym,
Yeah.
And now I've drank the Kool-Aid, as they say, and I'm pretty hooked and obsessed with it.
Yeah, there is definitely an obsession with that CrossFit stuff, huh?
Yeah, there really is. It's I've heard people talk about it as kind of like the quickest way to reach the runner's high of just like those endorphins when you're working out and sweating hard and stuff. But I think there's other things that are worse in this life to be addicted to if you're gonna have a vice like that.
Oh yeah, for sure. Cool, man. So let's get into this real estate thing. Talk to us about how did you? Well, you do some real estate investing, and so how'd you get into that? Why'd you get into that?
So I guess the very beginning of the story would be that I lived in small town Louisiana my whole life, had a very kind of middle class upbringing or whatever. Moved to Southern California right after college to get a job working for a magazine, as I mentioned, and the mindset shift that had to take place at that point was pretty big. I got to California and I was on a small salary, and I remember being at this car wash, and they had those little newspaper type booklets of houses nearby or whatever. I'm waiting for my car to get washed. I'm looking at this booklet, and I'm just thinking like, how in the hell do people afford these houses in Southern California? Like where I'm from, my house doesn't cost this much.
Yep.
And I was just like, man, I make like $33,000 a year. Like, how am I ever going to do this? And then a good friend of mine who you actually recently interviewed, his name's Terry Adams. He was on episode 134 of your show.
Yep.
Him and another buddy of ours recommended this book called Secret to the Millionaire Mind. And I was kind of going through a tough breakup at the time where I was, just needed kind of a big shift in my life. And I read this book, and it just really changed my perspective, changed my mindset, and in turn changed my life. So I went from how the hell do you ever afford a house in California to, okay, how am I going to afford a house in California? Like there's got to be a way. Other people are doing it. I just need to figure out the way. So yeah, that's kind of where it started, was just shifting my mindset. Again, a big change for me.
The distinction there was how the hell, like it's never going to happen, to right. How can I do it? How do I figure it out?
Exactly.
Right? So it was this total, like it's impossible to, now I just have to solve the problem. Is that right?
Yep. That's it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So how did that happen? How'd you solve it? What did you do? What were the kind of the steps you took, and yep. Tell us how it got going.
So after reading Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, which if anybody doesn't know, it's a book by T. Harv Eker. I recommend it to everybody I ever talk to. Like I said, it did change my life. after I read that book, I started to kind of ramp up the amount of freelance work that I was doing while I was working full time at the magazine. And I just got really into hardcore, like managing my money, saving my money, and just like balancing it all out. So I knew that based off my salary and based off the fact that I've, lived as a poor kid, the previous year in college or whatever, I didn't have a lot of overhead. And so all the money that I was making on the side outside of my full-time job, I would just put it into savings. So I stayed for probably about 2.5 years or so. And once I felt like I got to the point where I could, potentially start looking for a place and, maybe put a down payment on using FHA loans or whatever if I needed to. During that time, I also read other books like, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and kind of kept, continuing my education and stuff. And at that point, it was just like, okay, I've saved enough money over the last couple of years, and I've learned enough to feel like I'm ready to take this step. Then, let's go ahead and do this. And my original thing was that I was going to try to get a duplex here in California so that I can live in one side and rent out the other, obviously a very common practice. And after many, many months of looking, that just didn't seem realistic anymore. Like I was looking at places that were a little bit out of my budget, and even those were still like just in terrible shape. They needed too much work. But it was a good learning process nonetheless, going to these places, seeing how much work they were going to need, realizing that I wasn't capable of doing that kind of work and wasn't willing to invest the time and resources into learning it. So then I started looking for just, a house or a condo or something that I could live in myself. Ended up finding a great short sale, which this was in 2010, so the market was still really kind of rock bottom at this point. The condo that I ended up getting was $180,000, 3 blocks from the beach in Long Beach, and it had previously sold in 2006 for like $350,000. So the short sale process kind of taught me a lot as well, and just sort of continued with my real estate education, if you will. And it took, I think, close to 11 months from the time I put in my initial offer until the time I got the keys.
Wow.
And then I had a roommate living with me. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom place, and I had a roommate who was paying, more than half the mortgage, so that helped out a bit as well.
So let me ask you about the condo a little bit. This is something that a lot of our listeners are they live in expensive areas like LA or, San Francisco, whatever. And I get that question fairly often. Should I go buy a condo to go live in something? And now you did. A lot of times investors will say don't do it because of HOAs or whatever, but it sounds like you did it, and we can hear the rest of that story. But do you recommend that for people who are in those kind of markets? Should they look into a condo?
Maybe I was a little bit naive at the time because I didn't know a lot about it. I just knew that I had looked at so many places and so many of them were run down and in questionable areas because it is Long Beach after all. And when I walked into this place, I was like, okay, I can see myself living here. It's close to the beach. It's in a decent enough area. So I was pretty uneducated at the time about the HOA stuff. Because as I said, I'd really been looking for duplexes and I had really been kind of reading up on like the investment type of stuff. So I've had, good success with it, and I'm very happy with it. It's a small association, only 6 units. Which also means that I have to be involved in the board and everything. So, I was the treasurer for a couple of years, and this year is my turn to be the president, which isn't super fun. But it's really not that big a deal to me. I don't have any issues with it at all.
Yeah. So, and for those people listening, $180,000 in the Los Angeles area is a really good deal.
Yeah,
it's a
really good.
Yeah,
and
especially
when people see this place, they're like, "Whoa!" It's like been remodeled, granite countertops, like nice cabinets, great floors, and everything. It's kind of a funny sidestepping story here, but I actually have a gated garage, which is amazing in this area. Downtown parking can be a bitch in some cities. But then a couple days after I move in, because of the short sale and the agent didn't know a lot, a couple days after I moved in, a neighbor of mine was like, "Oh, you're so lucky you've got this storage room down there." And I was like, "What storage room?" And sure enough, I had to get a locksmith to come open this room, and it's like a 10 by 10, just fully locked storage room with shelves and room for bikes and everything.
Oh, nice.
So it was a nice little surprise there.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's great. Well, so I want to circle back a little bit.
Sure.
You had talked about this mentality of money management, this mentality that you had developed where you were going to be smart with your cash. And can you share a little bit more about that? For those people who are listening who are like, "Hey, I'm broke," or "I got a crappy job and I can't save anything." What do you do, or what do you recommend people do to start doing that?
My mother, when I went to college, set me up with an Excel spreadsheet, and she told me, a lot of people at that time, this was 2001 when I first went to college and left the house. She was telling me about people balancing their checkbooks. They write a check or they spend money and they deduct a line on their checkbook. They recalculate their balance. And I remember seeing her doing this, and she's like, well, now you have a computer, you're in college, like you can do this on the computer. So from the time I was 18, I started using an Excel spreadsheet. And that first year, I was like so anal about it because I thought that's what you had to do with your money. Otherwise, you were going to go broke or something. So I kept track of every dime that I spent on this Excel spreadsheet throughout college, or my first year at least. So I've adopted that and really built on it. And over the last 7 or 8 years that I've kind of been on this financial journey of mine, I've really fine-tuned and tweaked a bunch of different Excel spreadsheets. So my first thing is to tell people to kind of calculate their expenses, figure out how much they're making each month, how much their monthly expenses are, figure out what's left over, and figure out, a savings plan or an investing plan. And if that's, 5% in the beginning or 10% in the beginning, at this point, I'm up to pretty much 30% of every paycheck. I put 10% into one investment vehicle, 10% into another, and then 10% into a different savings thing. So figuring out a way to divide up your money, and all these people, financial gurus, self-help books, the whole deal is like they'll all tell you the same type of thing. Like even if it's a couple of dollars at first, like once you start managing it, you understand how things can grow and work and stuff. Kind of at the same token, I met a guy that became a big financial mentor to me, and he said the very first thing that I should do is track my net worth. So I started a new spreadsheet for that. I found online kind of like a base template to use. Started tracking my net worth, and at the time it was something like $11,000 or something. But I can look at it right now and see over the last 8 years that it's grown up to a couple 100% multiplied by that. So just seeing where your money is, seeing where you spend your money, and tracking your money is kind of the first step.
Yeah. Awesome. Agreed completely. I mean, until you start seeing what you're doing, you can be, you can have a lot of money. The rich people burn through money too. Poor people, rich, it doesn't matter. But so until you're actually watching your pennies go by, it's hard to really see it. And Brandon and I have talked about this on the show, like his Starbucks habit. Setting a budget. Like there's things that you love and that you just can't give up. Your vices, we all have them. Well, you don't have to, but constrain yourself and say, I'm going to limit myself to this. Having a budget, having a monthly budget is really powerful.
I'll have I have not had Starbucks in about 2 months now.
Oh my God.
I know, 2 whole months without. My wife still goes.
That's why you've been such a miserable.
That's why I've been.
I think that's actually a big reason why I was able to keep such low overhead. I never drank coffee because I didn't like the taste. I never drank alcohol. So I was able to save a lot of money that other people would spend kind of going out on a daily or weekly basis.
Here's the trick. The trick is you don't get coffee, you get peppermint hot chocolate. 170 degree peppermint hot chocolate with whipped cream. It is the best Starbucks drink on planet Earth, but there's like 1,000 calories in it, so that's why I stopped. I hired a personal trainer, and he's like, "Are you stupid? What are you doing?"
Yeah,
every day.
My thing is water. It's free out of the tap, and it saves me money, and it's healthy. Yeah. So.
And you are right about the booze thing. I mean, it's amazing how much money you can save by not drinking booze. And I married, my wife doesn't drink and never really drank. And so, once that happened, she was a cheap date. I became a cheap date. Going out to dinner, a nice dinner is $50, $60. You bring alcohol on board, now it's $80, $100. So it's a great thing. All right. So you also said something that I made a note about, which I thought was awesome. You're like, I found a bunch of really rundown properties, and I didn't want to mess with them because that's not my thing. And I think it's so important for listeners and for people in general, obviously, to know what you're good at and know what your skill set is. Because if you suck at that stuff and you go and you start trying to fix up a property and you're just not good at it or you don't like it, you're gonna start hating real estate. You're gonna start hating being in this business.
So that's actually kind of a point that I wanted to bring up. One of the things that I wanted to kind of get across to the listeners and stuff is that I really have set up my whole kind of quote unquote investing career right now based off of keeping a good balance in life and finding what I still want to do with my time. Because right now I don't want to make real estate my full-time business or gig. I think at some point in my life I might want to ramp that up, and I could sort of see that in the future at some point, but I'm not there right now. So right now my focus is, building these businesses that I'm doing, working for myself, staying active in the BMX or CrossFit community, these niches that I'm really passionate about. I see real estate as a long-term play, and so I'm not, right now taking that as my main focus. When I started out, I knew that I didn't want to put in a bunch of work into a place. And it's funny, when I got this condo, there was a handful of things that needed to be done. It needed a new garbage disposal. It was burnt out. I was like, oh, I'm sure I could do that myself. Well, after a couple hours and realizing I didn't have the right tool, trying to go buy the right tool, didn't get the right one again, I literally put an ad on Craigslist. I was like, I'll pay someone $20 to come over here and just like remove this nut for the stupid faucet because I don't have the right tool and I don't want to go back to Home Depot or whatever. 20 minutes later, 2 guys showed up and they switched it. They're like, oh, you want us to finish putting in the garbage disposal also? I'm like, please, go ahead. And At that point, I came up with, or maybe somebody, I don't want to poach somebody's quote, but I figured I'm a businessman, not a handyman, and I'm okay with that. And there's people that, get paid and make a living to do these things that I don't want to do. So I'm happy to pay them and help put food on their kids' plates. And, so when it came time to paint my condo when I moved in, I found somebody, paid them, I think like $700 to paint the whole thing. It took them a day. It would have taken me a couple weeks. And that day I left and went and rode my bike and I came home, my house was painted and I'm like, this is what I like. This is my style.
Yeah. Nice, man. That's awesome.
Well,
That's
true.
awesome.
I think a lot of people think they have to get into the handyman to be in real estate. They have to be good at construction or good at changing it. Mm-hmm. And I've said this before on the show before, but I'll say it again now. Like, I think being handy hurt me in my investing business. Like, yeah, I mean, it helped me get properties because I could get these rundown properties, but it made it so that I was an integral part of my business and I could not escape that. Even like I budgeted, all my budgets at the beginning were based on me fixing things. So now I don't fix things anymore. So I have to pay for that now. But right. I never budgeted that way in the beginning. So all my early properties now, they don't cash flow very well anymore because I'm not doing the work anymore. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that it hurt me knowing that I thought I was a handyman and not a businessman. So.
And there is not a single, task that requires one trip to Home Depot or Lowe's.
No.
Yeah. I mean, there's you always forget something. You always have to go back 6 times. It's not fun. Cool, man. All right. So, what came after the condo? So you got this.
Yeah. So sticking with that theme of kind of wanting to be a hands off, I started looking out of state because basically at that point I knew that anything in state was really expensive or anything nearby me was really expensive. And what really got me kind of in that, out-of-state investment type mode, again, my buddy Terry, who you spoke with on episode 134 of your show, he was talking to a mutual friend of ours at the time who was into construction, and he lived in Saginaw, Michigan. And poor guy, I know. He was buying up tons of these like rundown places after the market crashed for $5,000, a couple thousand, even maybe a couple $100, I think. But, by the time I caught wind of it, he already had several places under his belt and was putting in the work himself. So Terry ended up buying a place over there in cash, and I just kind of saw through him. I was like, man, like you made this look too easy, So my next play was to try to use the same real estate agent as my friend did because I felt like that was a trusted person. And then to buy in the same area where our other friend lived because that was kind of my eyes and ears on the ground. What ended up happening was me and the other guy in Michigan kind of had a falling out of some sort, and we just sort of lost touch. And then the agent that I was trying to work with was just really, really bad at communicating through emails. And I prefer to have everything in emails so I can see it in writing and not forget anything. And it just kind of threw up a red flag for me. And every time I asked questions, they didn't get answered. And I was like, okay, well, if my eyes and ears on the ground isn't there anymore and my trusted real estate agent doesn't seem trustworthy, now what am I going to do?
Yeah.
So I started calling around in Louisiana because that's where Terry lives. That's where my family lives. That's where I'm from. And things are cheaper there, but not as cheap in Michigan. I started calling around and basically just cold called real estate agents in the area until I found someone on the phone that seemed to fit the bill. And, I told them I'm an out-of-state investor. I want to buy a property that looks like this. I need somebody that's dealt with out-of-state people before. And this lady ended up working out really well. And every time I emailed her questions, they came back like point by point. I was like, okay, this is how I need somebody to communicate so that it's effective for me. Yeah. And this is going to work for me. So the first place that I bought as an investment was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single family in Louisiana in the same town that Terry lives in, which is a couple towns over from both where my parents live.
Got it. Awesome. And I I'm sorry about, the drama, but I love the story. And I like that you kind of stuck to your guns on, you didn't feel comfortable in
Yeah.
Michigan. The boots on the ground kind of failed you. And that was something that I had experienced, the exact same thing. And that really is one of the big reasons I tell people to beware of investing out of state is, once you lose your eyes and ears, you've got nothing and you're blind. And so just make sure that you can trust the folks that you're working with, anywhere, but especially when you're investing at a distance. Again, I love that you ended up not moving forward in Michigan, not because I have this hate towards Detroit. I don't know why anyone would think such a thing, but because it's a smart move. So you pick up this 3.2. What'd you pay? What does it rent? Tell us a little bit about the numbers.
Yep. So that one was like $63,000. I've got a sheet right here, so I can give you actuals. 63,500, and it rents for between 700 to 800. Like, I think it started out at 700, then maybe went to 725, maybe it's up to 750 now. So it's pretty good rent. And my buddy Terry also was working with a property manager at the time, so I was able to hire him on board, and I bought it without ever going down there to see the house or anything. So again, this was kind of in line with me wanting to stick to what I was enjoying doing in my personal life, but still been able to invest, very much on the side. And of course, I did, dedicate a lot of time and energy and focus into learning a lot of stuff before I made the plunge. For instance, when I was buying my condo, my real estate agent at the time was kind of a mentor of mine. He was a new agent, and he was really trying to help me learn as we started looking for places. And he turned me on to this book, which I'm holding up for anybody looking. It's called What Every Real Estate Investor Needs to Know About Cash Flow and 36 Key Financial Measures. So I read that book and literally studied it like a textbook and took notes on it every morning before I went to work for a long period of time. So again, I put in work ahead of time, but by the time I was ready to actually do the investing, it was very much a hands-off thing. So I bought it sight unseen. The property manager took care of everything. They had a checklist from the property inspector that told me what would need to be done, and I kind of went over that with the property manager and told him what I felt comfortable doing. And I said, you're the one renting it out. Get it to where you need it to be to get a tenant in there for me. And I let him do his thing because that's his business. And I stayed back in California shooting photos and riding my bike, and he was taking care of the property.
Wow.
So after that, I actually did go back to Michigan. Not physically, but so again, I knew that places were still cheap out there. And at this point, I, again, was still on a very small salary. And actually, at this point, I lost the salary because I quit my full-time job to be a freelance photographer. So now, if I tried to get a loan, things would look even worse for me on paper. I had the mortgage of the place I lived in. I just got the financing done for the single family in Louisiana. So at this point, I was like, well, my next step is going to have to be cash, or so I thought. I'm sure there's other options, but for me, I felt like a cash deal would be the best at the time. So saved some more money, and then I was like, okay, let's look back in Michigan because I can afford a place in Michigan in cash at this point. I didn't go back to the same real estate agent. I didn't contact the old friend of mine or anything. Again, I picked up the phone and started cold calling. I feel like maybe this is exaggeration, but it might have been literally the first guy that picked up the phone at any of these offices I tried to call. And I was just like, same deal. I'm an out-of-state investor. This is what I'm looking for. I need somebody that deals with out-of-state investors. I want somebody that also has rental properties of your own so that I know you understand where I'm coming from, blah, blah, blah. Had my whole spiel down. And right away, the guy was like, yeah, I've got 10 rentals of my own. I was a full-time investor or whatever before I, became an agent. I deal with out-of-state investors. I just sold one last month, yada, yada. So I was like, okay, cool. Show me what you got. He sent me an email with 3 properties listed, and I bought one of them. It was that easy. Wow. So again, I never went there to see it. I didn't go crazy on the analysis stuff. It was like, okay, this is a 3-unit. Total rent's like $1,300. It costs $19,000. Yeah, there's going to be things wrong with it because it's old and it's in Saginaw. And yeah, there's going to be other surprises that come up. But hey, for this price, let's go ahead and try it out. And so yeah, we just went ahead and sent off a cashier's check and had it a couple weeks later.
Did it need a lot of work in that I mean, like after you got it, did it need a lot of repairs? At 19,000 is pretty cheap for 3 units.
Well, it was already rented out. All the units were filled when I got it. So I figured if there was people in there and they were paying, then it was good enough for them. I can guarantee it's not a place that I would want to live in, but somebody wants to live there. And one of the ladies had been there for like 12 years or something. So yeah, the property inspection report was pretty lengthy. The biggest thing at the time was the roof. Was going to need to be replaced or whatever. I knew that was going to be a big expense, and that actually helped me negotiate the price down a little bit because I got a pretty high estimate and quote for the roof, and I was able to bring back that to the seller and say, I need to take some money off because this is a much higher estimate than I originally planned for. But after I got it, I didn't necessarily dump in a bunch of more money. Like I said, it was already rented out. So as those tenants moved out and new ones came in, of course we had to do some cleanup and light repairs and stuff. So that just kind of came as we went along.
Okay. And how was that? I mean, when did you buy that? That was a couple of years ago, I'm assuming.
We pull up my Excel document here.
Nice.
There you go. I love it.
And I'll tell you the date was October 9, 2013.
Okay. So in the few years since you bought that, how has it been for you? Has it been good? A lot of repairs?
It's been a little bit of a pain in the ass. It hasn't been the best thing, but at the same time, I look at this as a long-term play. I'm going to have this thing for God knows how many years. And just like you put money in the stock market, you don't watch it every day and start, stressing out about it. You let it sit there and do its thing over time. So it hasn't filled up my bank account exponentially by any stretch of the imagination. It's maybe brought in a little bit of money, maybe broke even. I'm pretty sure it hasn't really lost money at this point. And there's been a few larger things that have come up. One of them actually, just again, in keeping in the theme with kind of sticking to my guns and living my life how I want to and being a very hands-off investor, it needed a new furnace because it's in Michigan, right? So I needed a new furnace, and this was, last April or something, and I was in Louisiana hanging out with my 7-year-old niece at the time. We were at the bowling alley. I get a call saying that the furnace needs to be replaced. It's going to be $2,000. So I'm at the bowling alley. My niece is throwing the ball, and I'm like, okay, cool, here's the credit card number. I put the phone down, and then I went up to my turn to bowl. And it was like, I've got money in my investing account for this purpose. I'm not going to stress out about it because I'm not there to take care of it. The property manager's there. He knows what needs to be done. Here's the credit card. Let's pay for it and get back to hanging out with my niece and enjoying life.
That's great. So, I think that itself speaks to the importance of having reserves and having the capacity to invest. A lot of people will get in and they end up being the tired landlords. I think, in many, many cases, they get into the game, they're not prepared. They don't have, why am I blanking out on the name of the account? Reserve account to handle things. And so when something comes up, they flip out and, they start going crazy and, they ignore things because they don't want to spend the money on it. You've got to have those reserves and you really have to, as a landlord, it is your responsibility to take care of things when they break. It is your responsibility. And so the fact that you're like, all right, you know what, I trust this person. And I love that you trust that person. I wish every property manager were trustworthy, but the fact that you found somebody that's worked for you is great. I wanted to talk about the buying sight unseen really quickly. Is that something, clearly you're not a risk averse person. For other folks, do you recommend buying sight unseen? What challenges come with doing that?
For me, it's actually a little bit easier. Because for me, if I see a place, then I try to imagine myself living there and I look at every little thing of like, oh, this would need to be fixed. This looks crappy. I wouldn't like this. And I would get more emotional about it if I saw it because it's hard for me to look at a place and feel like I wouldn't want to live here. You know what I mean? So for me, not seeing it actually helps because the property manager says that he can get it rented. I listen to him. I say go for it. So for me, it's actually easier. And I think there's, kind of different levels of that emotional quality to money and finance and stuff. You hear people about it in the stock market. Like I said, they look at it every day and they stress out about it or whatever. So if you're the kind of person that is going to be stressed out because you're not seeing it, then maybe you need to see it. And I think that kind of comes sort of with that Secret to the Millionaire Mind or just like sort of working on yourself and conditioning your own mindset to get you in the right place to not be emotional about money, to not be emotional about your investments and stuff. So for me, I think it actually works better.
Do you or have you visited that or your other investments, or have you never seen them?
So the one in Louisiana, it didn't get rented, or the first one in Louisiana, because I do have another one that I got after the Michigan place. The first one in Louisiana, it didn't get rented right away, and just by chance, I ended up going to see my family before it got rented. So I did go in there and see it before it got rented, and I've gone back to Louisiana to see my family, and I'll drive by it every once in a while, partly as part of a tax write-off because I'm going to quote unquote check in on my properties.
There you go.
But the one in Michigan, I've never been there, and might not ever go there.
There you go.
The third one in Louisiana, I actually did see before I bought it, not because I was dying to or wanted to or needed to, just because I happened to be there. And the agent, who is also the property manager that I'm using now, he was like, "Yeah, let's go drive by and check it out." And I know the tenant; she'll let us walk through there and blah blah blah. So I did go see that one, but not because I needed to.
All right. So how has the property values fared? Do you know? I mean, do you track what they're worth today? Like, for example, the triplex in Michigan. Could you sell that one for more than you bought it for today, do you think?
That's a great question. I haven't looked at it too much. I feel like maybe I had asked my property manager about that at one point to update my Excel spreadsheet. Right now, I still say that it's worth the same, but I don't have a great answer for that one.
Sure, that's fine. That's fine. I just know that, like, a lot of times with those really low-end properties, sometimes they may never go up in value, and that's a conversation we have on the site a lot. Is they may go up just with inflation. So it's just something to keep in mind if people are buying. Those ones might not go up as much, but you buy a $300,000 house in a great neighborhood outside of Detroit, that one might actually go up because it's a nicer neighborhood. So
that's a great point, because the condo that I live in now has been pretty much my best performer, but I'm living in it because that one has gone up from about 180 to now it's probably about 270.
Wow.
So that one's appreciated amazingly. But again, it's been 2 years since I got the one in Michigan, and I do look at it as a long-term play. And provided we can keep tenants in there and keep the money rolling in, then I think it's going to be good. And keep improving it slowly but surely over the years, and hopefully the long-term play works out.
So what is the long-term play? What's the plan? I mean, it sounds like you've got a few in Louisiana, some in Michigan. Are you going to stick to the small multis, 1 to 3, 1 to 4 units, and just keep building? Is this, do you eventually want to rely fully on this portfolio? Tell us a little bit about your plans.
That's a really good question, and I wish I had a really, really solid answer for you, because I am very big on writing down goals and sticking to goals and stuff. But I haven't necessarily mapped out like the long-term game plan. I know at this point I do want to keep acquiring single families and small multis. I think at some point when I'm ready for it, I might try to find a partner to kind of build up the business more and start getting a lot more aggressive with this. But again, that's not going to come until I feel like I'm kind of tired of where my other career paths have brought me. And eventually I do want the passive income from my real estate to allow me to not have to work. But for right now, in the next I'd say 5 years or so, it still looks like the single families and the small multis and stuff. I'm running into problems now though, because as I said, I'm self-employed, and getting loans and financing and stuff has been a big challenge. So at this point, I'm working on different types of line of credit, which even that is challenging with my job or lack of job situation. So time to get creative and figure out the next step. Which again, that is relatively difficult because I'm not making this a job right now, because I'm kind of doing this on the side and stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. By the way, there's a really good book you can pick up.
I'm going to send him my book.
BiggerPockets.com/no money. The BiggerPockets book on investing with little I don't know. Why'd you make the title so complicated?
I like the title. Low and no money down. BiggerPockets.com/no money. All right.
What's the trick copy?
What? Yeah, I'm gonna send Fat Tony a copy. All right. Well,
or he'll kill you. He's a mafioso.
He is a mafia guy. All right, so we talked a little bit about that. We talked a little bit about what you're going to do in the future. Now you said maybe look for a partner, that kind of thing. Kind of the last question I want to get before we go to the fire round is, what mistakes do you feel like you've maybe made that you could, help other people not make the same ones, or what would you, looking back, just reflecting on the last few years of your investing, what kind of advice would you give others based on that?
I don't really feel like I've had any big mistakes or anything.
Well, that's good.
Like I said, I don't think the Michigan property has been, a grand slam home run. but I don't think it's necessarily bad, and it's only 2 years in. I guess with that, maybe there were some things that I wasn't really aware of. Maybe I should have asked a few more questions about, the expenses, because not growing up in a place where it snows and not living in a place where it snows, I didn't realize that during the winter months I would need a budget for snow removal, and how high the gas bill would get up during the winters and stuff. Or even that I would be paying the gas bill because it's on a single meter for the 3 units or whatever, because of how the house was converted. So there's a few of those type of things where, maybe I should have asked a little bit more questions, that I just wasn't aware that those questions existed, But yeah, I don't really feel like I have big mistakes. And just advice for people, for me, is all about, working on yourself. If you can condition your mind to be successful, then you're good to go. Because again, the Secrets of the Millionaire Mind book, I sound like I'm promoting the dude. I have no affiliation, but it just changed my life so much that I feel like if I hadn't read that book, even the other like real estate books or the Rich Dad Poor Dad books, they wouldn't have sunk in and got down. They wouldn't have had such an impact on me if I hadn't kind of formatted my mindset to begin with. You know what I mean? Yep. I would have read these books and still left the book thinking, yeah, but I'm not like that, or yeah, I can't do that because of this, and I'd be making excuses or whatever. And being able to really start out with a great solid mindset kind of set me up for success with everything else I did.
Awesome.
Yeah, makes sense. I think mindset is so important, and something I did not focus on enough in the beginning. I just went out there and functionally tried to make things work, but I had a lot of limiting beliefs, things that I didn't think I could do, or I don't know. Mindset is so important, and that's why I really stress people should read the mindset books just as much as the books on how to actually do things.
And the funny thing about that is, I personally used to say, oh, it's a bunch of hullabaloo, right? Mindset, what the hell is mind? Who cares? Mm-hmm. It really matters. And whether that's in your business life, in your personal life, how you look at the world will determine your path, and it'll determine your level of success in anything and everything that you do. So without a doubt, I was a major skeptic in the world of kind of creating mindsets. I thought it was some, self-help guru BS.
A self-help book.
Yeah. It's great. It's great.
So the other advice that I have kind of comes in the form of mentors. And maybe this is a good plug for the BiggerPockets website too, because as I said, when I was getting my condo, my real estate agent was a new agent. So he was kind of learning, and he was also interested in investing. He was a mutual friend of mine. And we had actually played, what is that, cash flow game or whatever? Cash flow 101 or something. Yeah. We had played that together. So I knew that he was, into that real estate investing type thing. So him kind of working with me while we were finding the place and sort of helping me learn and, recommending books, and just having him kind of by my side that whole time made me feel like I wasn't alone, which again, people can go on your website and find that same type of thing through the forums there and stuff. And then also a kind of a coworker acquaintance of mine who ended up becoming a very, very close friend. As I was talking to her about, sort of my newfound mindset and my newfound desire to start on this financial journey, she was like, oh, you should talk to my dad. He's a wealth advisor. And sure enough, I got on the phone with him, and he was, told me that when he got started in this game, in the financial game, he had a mentor that helped him. And, he said, I'll mentor you for free, but you just have to promise to pass along this knowledge to other people as you come up, So he kind of told me the same thing. And he's been a great resource to bounce ideas off of, or to, more or less just be a sounding board for things. And like I said, make me feel like I'm not alone in this, and kind of just give me that extra push of confidence of like, yeah, you're on the right track. You're doing the right things, So finding people that can, share that mindset and share that journey with you a little bit is really helpful, I think.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think it's, And like you said, it's one of the valuable things about BiggerPockets is even if you don't have you don't have to go pay for a paid mentor and, hire some coach to walk you through it. You can just find people that are doing this in real life. I met people all over BP, and then I've hung out with them in the real world that have helped me learn and grow as an investor. So yeah, very cool. All right, well, why don't we transition this thing over to the fire round?
It's time for the fire round.
All right, fire rounds. These questions come straight out of the BiggerPockets forums, which we were just talking about. Fancy that. Question number 1. I'm investing far away from the place I live. Would you recommend, as a first investment in a new area, a single-family home in just a normal neighborhood, or look for a gated community?
Well, all of my places have been really far from gated communities, so I can't really speak to gated communities very well. But I would say do the homework, run the numbers, and go with what makes sense financially. Again, don't get too emotional about it. Talk to the potential property manager that's going to be running the place. Ask him, do you feel comfortable managing this one that's not in a gated community? Are you going to be able to get tenants in there? Are they going to be good tenants that are going to stay and pay the bills? And if he feels comfortable, then it doesn't matter for you if it's gated or not, because the money's still going to be coming in. You're still going to be providing a house to somebody that needs it.
Right on. Right on. Awesome. All right. What do you think? Is it smarter to invest in a single or multifamily home for my first investment?
Let's see. Again, I think it all depends on the numbers. I don't necessarily think it matters that much aside from that. But if you do go for the multifamily, keep in mind those questions, like I said, that I forgot to ask of, are you going to have to pay some of the utilities? Do you have to pay for the yard maintenance? Because if it's a multifamily, you can't, tell them, oh, you guys each take every other week to cut the grass or snowplow. That doesn't happen. So you're going to have to pay for some of these expenses and stuff. So I don't think it matters. You just have to know ahead of time what questions to ask and what you're going to be looking for.
Right on.
When you're looking at a multi-unit, if you're looking to buy a multifamily property, what do you specifically look for?
Well, for me, I specifically look for a place that the property manager feels comfortable getting tenants into. That's pretty much it. Like I said, run the numbers, and if that guy says that he can get people to live in there to pay the bills, then I'm okay with it.
Right on. You are about as hands off as they come, man. And the next two questions that we have, I think we kind of have covered. Like, how do you balance your career with investing? And I know your career is primary, and you got the managers, so I'll answer that one. The other question we had was, where do you primarily look when looking for a new investment property? Online, paper, word of mouth? And I'll let you answer that one.
I did look online a bit, but I feel like every time that I've bought one, it's been through an agent or the property manager himself, which I guess now in Louisiana, my property manager is also an agent because, again, Terry Adams talked about this on, again, I'll just plug for you, it was episode 134 of your show. He talked about how, as the property manager, he deals with all these properties. So he, knows when the owners are getting ready to, dump off the properties and when they're getting tired of them, or, when they've exhausted their liquid and their reserves and don't have money to fix stuff. So they just need to get rid of the place. So kind of having that inside track is super helpful, I think.
Right on. Yeah. Cool.
Very cool. All right. Moving over to the world famous Four. All right, these questions we're asking every single guest, so we'll throw them at you now. Number one, what is your favorite real estate book?
Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. Can I list off a few that I have here, though?
Yeah.
So Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, and then Rich Dad, Poor Dad came after that. Also, not a book, but just the movie The Secret, kind of more about that mindset type thing, like setting goals, visualizing stuff. And the one that I mentioned, What Every Real Estate Investor Needs to Know About Cash Flow, it's a very, very long title. That book, I honestly couldn't tell you a damn thing about it at this point. This is so many years later. Like I read it 6 years ago. But like I said, I felt like I studied it like a textbook. And even though I might not remember anything super specific from it, I think just putting that time and energy and focus into something, like you're going to get something out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. When I remember I read that book, like 6-7 years ago, and it was hugely influential, that Frank Gallinelli, which we had on the show back a couple years ago. But it was just so instrumental. Now I don't remember every single piece of the book, but I just know that it built that foundation that is so important, like on understanding all those terms and what they mean. So yeah, I love that book.
Yep. Cool. Frank's a good guy.
He is.
All right. Favorite business book, non-real estate?
4-Hour Work Week.
Okay.
Is that a business book?
Yeah, absolutely. Mindset and business.
Yeah. So, like I said, I worked full time for a magazine. I did that for about 5.5 years. And just to fill in a few of the gaps a little bit, I was a photographer and video producer for a BMX bike riding magazine. So my job was to travel all over the world, basically documenting these professional riders and professional athletes. And all the guys that I was shooting with didn't have jobs, and they just seemed like so carefree and just, I was jealous of their lifestyle, basically. So kind of with the help of that book, helping me realize like how you can run business and do business without, living in the corporate world, and having this influence from these guys that I was hanging out with. That was kind of like, okay, I can do this. And it took several years for me to work, and transition over to that. But now I've been, on my own for 3.5 years or so of freelance work, and it's been incredible. And I've been able to travel more, build relationships, find new hobbies, work less, and make more money.
Very cool.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. What about hobbies? Sounds like your career is a hobby, which is a beautiful thing. What else do you do?
Yes, it used to be BMX riding. I don't do that quite as much anymore because I'm so into CrossFit now. So CrossFit's a hobby. And then I just recently, as I said, with this newfound freedom, I picked up snorkeling and surfing, which there's plenty of out here in Southern California. So yes, surfing, snorkeling, CrossFit.
Very cool. That's
awesome, man.
Like a good
Awesome.
life.
Yeah.
Final question. What do you believe sets apart successful investors from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
Probably just to keep in theme, mindset and priorities, and maybe goals, and maybe that's kind of in line with priorities. But I'm very, very big on making a game plan and setting action and following it to make your goals happen. So definitely those people that have the drive and the determination to set goals and follow them, I think that's going to set them apart.
Awesome.
Great.
All right, man. Fat Tony, where can people reach out and find you, man?
I have social networks all over the web. That's just Fat Tony BMX. And even though I'm not really riding and BMX isn't really my career anymore, the name's been around for a long time, so that's sticking. So Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and .com, Fat Tony BMX. Also, if I can give a quick plug, I have my own podcast called The Expansion Project, which I talk a lot about mindset and just kind of find interesting and successful people and sort of deconstruct, what makes them tick. And I actually interviewed you, Joshua, on episode 25 of my podcast. So that's called The Expansion Project. You can find that on iTunes or Stitcher, or just go to theexpansionprojectpodcast.com. And if I can do one more quick little plug, I recently started a new business kind of in the CrossFit world. It's an aggregate blog, very similar to the website that I ran for the BMX magazine, where we basically find the coolest videos and the best photos and report on all the latest news in the industry. And that's called breakparallel.com. So if there's any investors that are CrossFitters, go check that out.
Break Parallel, you said?
Breakparallel.com. It's like when you go to a bottom of the squat. You got a personal trainer now. Come on.
Yeah.
You know
I'm gonna go there. And
Cool.
yeah. And
Nice.
I actually have some friends that are BPers that are also CrossFitters, so I'm gonna send them that way too.
It's a
Awesome. Thank
cult.
you. I appreciate that.
It is a cult. Yeah.
It is. Awesome, man. Well, listen, and the podcast was great. We had a good time. I had a good time doing the Fat Tony show, and we chatted about real estate, and which is why he's here to talk about it today. All right, man. Well, listen, thanks again for being part of the podcast. We definitely appreciate it, and lots of luck to you on the ongoing budding investing career, and we'll look forward to keeping up.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, Fat, take it easy, man.
Later.
I take care.
All right, everybody, that was Fat Tony. Yes, Fat Tony.
Who's actually ripped? I didn't want to embarrass him.
He is ripped.
Yeah.
And
Go check out his Instagram, and you'll see.
If you need a new stereo, he could get you one off the back of a truck. It's Anyway, well,
I don't
thanks.
even think he's Italian. Is he Italian?
Italian? Is that how you say it?
What do you say?
Italian.
Italian. Is that weird?
Yeah,
Is
it's
that
weird.
my Northwest accent?
I don't know, but it's weird. Italian.
Italian? Is that what you say? Italian?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Weird.
Well, anyway, it was a fun show. It was a fun show. So what have you been thinking about this stock market, man?
The stock market. I'm
Yeah.
glad I don't have anything in it. But, yeah, I don't know. Hopefully, in the time since we recorded this, it's been recovering. Hopefully, because a lot of people lost a lot of money recently.
Yeah, it's been kind of crazy,
But that's how it goes.
Well, it's how it goes, and it's another reason for those people who aren't in real estate to consider it, because the housing market, it can go up and down for sure, but you have more control. I think in how your destiny plays out in real estate. Would you agree?
Not at all. I hate real estate investing, and that. No,
wow,
yeah,
you're fired. What?
I fully agree. I mean, so here's my problem with stocks. I've always been, and I mean, I used to be a stock trader, but when the price of a stock drops by 20%, 30%, 50%, because some board director did something bad, or there was a weird illegal case, or just the market
Or
turns.
because China is having a bad
devalues
economy.
their-
Yeah.
Like, all you can do is sell or you can buy some more.
Or you can hold on for
10 years, whatever. I like that on my rental properties, if the market drops, I can hustle harder to recover that. So when the market did drop, I've got properties that the value dropped, but my cash flow stayed the same because I just hustled harder. I made sure that it wasn't sitting vacant. I made sure that it was still renting good. And I like that assurance I got. So
no, it's I think that's one of the important things about it. Now, granted, you're not guaranteed to get the same rents. I mean, rents have been at crazy records lately, and you can't count on that continuing. But if it does turn, there's ways to improve upon it. Fixing up the property, making yours. Scott and I were talking about this in the office, and he's got a rental property. It's doing well. He was shopping for another property and saw another property in the area that was getting considerably more rent. And he went and he looked, and he's like, wow, they really fixed this thing up, fantastically. And he's like, what am I doing? This is crazy. I need to fix my place up and capture, that difference and get the rent difference. So, there's, again, you have more control. I'd say far less external factors that can affect your rental property than can affect potentially stocks that you're buying. So
agreed.
Yeah, cool, man. Cool. Well, why don't we get out of here?
Okay.
What do you think?
I'm gonna go get some my second half of my breakfast. Since
I'm gonna go get some Starbucks. I think.
Yeah, rub it in. Do you want to just drink your peppermint hot chocolate in front of me?
I might. 173 degrees.
2 months. This has been tough.
Wow. So now you have enough money now to buy another property as a result of not buying Starbucks.
The irony is that I'm spending more on my personal trainer than I was on Starbucks, but that's okay. I'm down. I started at 215, weight at 215, and I'm down to 201 this morning.
Really?
Yeah. And so
what are you doing?
I am eating only whole foods, only like not Whole Foods the store, but real foods, nothing,
whole grains and nothing prepackaged.
Yeah, nothing prepackaged. Everything's cooked. I don't know. Other than that, I mean, it's fruits, vegetables, meat.
Yeah,
and a little bit of.
Yeah, but you're exercising? I'm assuming.
And I'm exercising 3 times a week. And I'm trying to walk. I'm doing P90X 3 times a week, and I'm walking 10,000 steps at least 5 times a week.
Nice. Yeah, I saw you climbing up on the chart of our.
Yeah. My Fitbit here today. I'm only at 2,900, but yesterday I hit 14,000. But that's because I stood for the webinar. I find out
I'm at 2,000 today. Yeah, I gotta start walking.
I'm whooping you.
All right, man. Let's get out of here.
All right, I'm out of here.
All right, I'm Josh Dorkin, signing off.
You're listening to BiggerPockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.